Hey, Calvary San Diego, thanks for taking some time to be here with me. I wanted to take a moment and get to talk about the importance of reading your Bible. Especially because we're not able to come together on a regular basis. And I know for many Christians, the issue of just consistent Bible reading is a struggle. And I think that we can all agree right now, if you're watching this, you got to agree with me on this. Time is not our problem right now. We got plenty of time. We're at home. Yeah, maybe it's kind of more distracting. You got kids everywhere or whatnot. But listen, I want to speak to us about maybe some tools that you could utilize that would help you to be able to read the scriptures and to get as much out of it as you possibly can. So here's a couple ideas. First of all, consistency is most important. It really is. And what I mean by consistency is not just reading every day at the exact same time. Now, what I mean is this. It's finding the proper, getting into a book of the Bible, not just randomly, closing your eyes and, Lord, where do you want me to read? And then boom, here's where I'm reading at. You'll end up in Leviticus or something that makes no sense to you at all. Now let's start in a New Testament book. Or maybe you go through the life of David. We call those narratives. A gospel is a great place to start. It'll not only be easier to read and to be consistent in, but also it'll get your heart fully just fixed on Jesus all day long. It's a great idea. Just imagine you take the Gospel of John. Now you might be saying, oh, I've been a Christian so long. Friends, every book of the Bible is for us all the time. So pick whatever book that you want to read and you just start reading it. It's so important to remember this. It's better to have 5, 10, 15 minutes of comprehensive thought than it is to spend an hour but not understand one bit of what you're reading. And so just give yourself a little bit of time, maybe read a whole chapter, read one chapter. And the goal of Bible reading is not just to read it and be done. The goal is to let God speak to us and speak into our lives. I can't tell you, and I'm sure this is your story as well. I've been reading something that I know, it has nothing to do with kind of what's going on in my life, and yet somehow God used that passage to speak to me right there. It's amazing. So here's what my suggestion is. I want you to sit down, take out the Bible, turn to whatever book you've decided that you're going to read through, and then before you start reading, you just pray. Lord, help me to understand what you want to say to me in these moments. Just open your heart to really letting God speak to you. So consistency. Once you've read chapter 1, the next day you got it, chapter 2. The next day you got it, chapter 3. In fact, if you're real adventurous, let me encourage you on something. Not only do that, but maybe choose a proverb as well. And it's so easy. 31 days of a month, most months, 31 proverbs. So you'll always know if it's March 25, I'm going to read Proverbs 25. And give yourself the opportunity to just be consistent in the scriptures. But not only that, let me give you my kind of second piece of advice for this. Find your own rhythm. Is it better for you to read in the morning? Is it better for you to read at night? In the Bible, we read about people, early in the morning, late at night, on my bed, out in the, just find your rhythm. Is it best for you to make noontime your reading time? Do it. Before the kids get up, do that. Once they've gone to bed at nighttime, it doesn't matter. Just be consistent and find your rhythm. Find that routine that works for you and do that. Now here's what I would suggest to you. I would suggest that you take out your Bible and that you have pen and paper or pencil and paper ready. Here's why. If we ask God to speak to us, then we should expect God to do the speaking. And so you get yourself ready. I have done in my Bible, and I write into my Bible itself, if I read something and I don't understand it at all, rather than just going on, I put a little question mark next to it. Let me tell you why. Because there's going to come a day when I'm going to be back there reading again, and I've seen this happen so many times, that I read the passage again a couple of years later, and I have understanding. God speaks it to my life. And then I erase that question mark. It's okay to mark things up with question marks right now. If it didn't make sense to you, you don't know what he's talking about, it's okay. Put a question mark there. Beyond that, just a couple ideas to think about when you're reading the Bible, especially the narratives of the Gospels. Maybe this is like if you're a teacher out there or you're a student currently, this will become familiar. This is a bit familiar to you. Look for main characters. Try to understand what's happening. Identify the characters. Who's the main character? Who is that main character speaking to? What is the context of that? You can discover all of those things just by reading it, by opening your mind and opening your heart to the Lord and saying, Lord, give me understanding to what I'm reading right now. Now, as you're doing that, there's one more bit of advice I'd want to give as you're reading through scriptures, is that I want you to not put yourself in the place of the main character. But when you're reading it, I want you to consider, like, especially if you're going through a gospel, okay? I'm going to focus on that. As you're reading a gospel and you read about Jesus speaking to someone, Jesus speaking to the Pharisees, Jesus speaking to the disciples, Jesus speaking to a sick person, whatever it is, I want you not to try to put yourself in Jesus's shoes. You and I are never Jesus in the Bible. We are, and I love to say this to people, you're the other guy. So as Jesus is speaking to a sick person, allow yourself to identify with that. What is it that God is saying to that person? Listen, this is a harder one, but it's still true. Sometimes Jesus is speaking to the Pharisees, and I let God just like, okay, Lord, is there areas of my heart where I've become a Pharisee? Let God speak that into my life. Allow yourself to understand the narrative. Allow yourself to understand the context. Give yourself the opportunity to just to be in that moment and let the Lord speak to you. Bible reading, it's a discipline. It's not something that just happens. There's no mystery about this though. The eternal God who gave us His word through the scriptures, He wants to allow those scriptures to speak into our lives. So be consistent, find your rhythm, identify the main characters, and don't put yourself as Jesus in that story, but see yourself as the other person, and then let God speak His heart, His love, His will, His truth into your life. And you and I are going to enjoy the scriptures. Now listen, you might read something and you're like, man, I don't feel like I enjoyed that. Be consistent. Keep doing it. Get back in the next day, and the next day, and the next day. Friends, what if this season that we're in, this coronavirus, is allowing you and I to reset good habits in our lives? So let's get into the scriptures, and let's let God speak into our lives.